everyone. Welcome to another edition of Art of the Bay Sessions. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button to catch future episodes. Now let's jump into the interview. Thanks again.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Art of the Bay Sessions. And we are being joined by our very special guest, Kayla. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, it's good to see you again. And just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, it's been a couple, well, for sure I know it's been over a year because of the whole pandemic and everything, but it's definitely been a while since we've been able to catch up. But yeah, I'm so thankful for you joining us here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So the first thing I usually ask folks here, especially since you and I haven't caught up in a while, I ask if you don't mind giving us a brief history or a brief timeline, as we like to say here, of your career so far. And it could be anything. It could be from like your overall career or just like your career journey to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been working in the Bay Area for about 8 years now. And I would say this is kind of where I launched my career, is just diving into tech. I actually moved here and I worked on the Fisherman's Wharf at Pier 39.
Oh, really?
I spent one summer there and I was like, absolutely not. I ended up just jumping into a local tech company and got it started in their finance department and ended up in their operations. And I'm like, I love this. I love doing facilities. I love doing operations. And I've just kind of been working with tech, finance, nonprofits in the Bay, and just living it up here and just kind of exploring San Francisco for all it has. And I really love it here. This is where I want to spend my life. This is where I want to build my career. I've been building my career. And at some point, I started doing night classes at the City College in San Francisco. And it just so happened during the pandemic, I had already been transitioning to transfer all my stuff to San Jose State. And so now I am doing school at San Jose State in the interior design department. So it's a mix between interior design and architecture. So it's an interior architecture degree. We focus on commercial design. So that's kind of my next pivot with my career after doing facilities and operations, is moving into more design and more of the facility side, but on the design side, which is super cool and interesting.
Awesome. Where are you originally from?
So originally I'm from Mendocino, California.
Oh, okay.
And I also grew up part-time in I would say Delray Beach, Florida, which people might know, maybe Boca Raton, Florida. It's a little closer. It's a bigger name, but spend some time out there too. But technically, I'm a Cali girl.
That's good. Pretty much homegrown California all the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So I was kind of looking through your LinkedIn, and what's the difference between traditional interior design and interior architecture, if there even is a difference?
It's interesting you say that. I actually didn't know anything about interior architecture until maybe a few years ago, when I thought interior design was mostly residential. And I thought, I'm interested in interior design, but I also really like the building aspect. I had no idea about even I didn't even put together there was a commercial side. I thought that was all architects do that. And my professor at the time introduced me to this program, and she's and I've seen it before, where it's a more of a European introduction, where it's you blend interior design with architectural components. And so I've had to do drafting. I do all AutoCAD online, 3D building. And you learn how to do coding. You learn building techniques and things like that. And so you have to learn how to build out in a 3-dimensional space. It's from vertical, horizontal, every way which you can think of. It's just a lot of people, they're can you come style my home? And they think it's just applying wallpaper and upholstery. And I'm okay, that's cool. We can do that. But it's also like we learn coding and we learn how to like materials and things like that you can apply, and like different standards that you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And interior designers, they can build that over their career, and a lot of people do that. In interior architecture, you just kind of build to the next standard of like these different skills that you can bring to the industry.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting because I know for the last couple of years that when I was in art school that we would just use like 3D programs for like entertainment purposes when it comes to just doing animation or for commercials. But it's also been interesting to kind of see it from the side where how far in advance the interior design or in this case the architecture world has done as well with like using these 3D programs, and how advanced they've come all these years as well, just to see like how you can kind of like design everything from the ground up, and like the amount of options that people have now in order to use those programs.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to clarify, like my degree doesn't make me an architect. Like it's all interior design. It's just kind of like a specialty, like part of our degree where it's like, oh, we have learned like architectural components, but legally, like we can't call ourselves architects.
Gotcha.
We're all interior designers. There's interior decorators, interior designers, and people have different, like, they have like different feelings around like how people describe it or how what they call themselves. And there's definitely like the educational side of it. But yeah, no, just getting back to like even the development of software. Like when I started taking studio classes, like I just learned basics on SketchUp, and I thought then that was the coolest thing ever. And now it's like you can 3D print a house. And even just looking at my earlier portfolio work when I started doing school, it's like, oh my gosh, like stuff that I'm doing now, it's just like come leaps and bounds within just several years.
Yeah.
The realistic rendering that you can do and the material application and just like what you can build. And it's crazy. Like my professors, like the heads of my department don't even know how to use these softwares.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like it's like a lot of us are just learning these applications. And like, this is like where like the frontier of us are all leading. It's like, just what you can do and how you can apply it. And it's very interesting.
That's amazing. So I would imagine that they're more just kind of teaching you the fundamentals that they grew up with, and that now you're taking those fundamentals, but going a little step further by developing with the current technology as well, which is pretty crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, they do bring in professionals who know how you use the programs, and they're like, oh, this is how you do it.
Right.
But yeah, definitely like the heads of our department that have been doing this for 20 years are like, we have no idea. Like, we wouldn't even know where to start. And it's not, and it's really like they have so much of the fundamentals that they give to us, and we just kind of like just put it in a different we put it in a software.
Right.
We, my hand drafting is very poor. You do not have to have so much drawing skills is probably what you used to. Thank goodness. But if that was to deter anyone where they think, oh my gosh, I have to be this incredible sketch artist and all that, it's like, no, you don't. Everything's on software now, and it's crazy. And that's what kind of like, that's what I like to tell a lot of people too. It's like anyone who feels deterred from going in the profession thinking like, I have to know like drafting and I have to know like hand sketching. It's like, well, there's ways around it. And it's not so much the focus of what the industry is so much. Like you should have those skills, but there's so many ways that you can work around that too.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing to hear as well, because it kind of just shows where if you're passionate about like that specific field, then there's these programs and schools that will pretty much help you kind of learn everything. And that's really cool to hear that. Yeah. If some of us are like not blessed with like the skills of like drawing or anything else like color matching or anything, then at least like there's a way to like learn it at that point. And that's really awesome.
Yeah. And there's even, I mean, like I like to tell my friends too, they're like, oh, I'm so afraid of like interior design because of like the whole color thing. It's like, okay, but if you're good with like shapes and you know how to create like the space, like there's other people that can do the color matching.
Right.
There's always a, like it depends on where you land too. And like you all have, like everyone has specialties.
Right.
There's people that just have a specialty of creating like the glass surfaces around a building.
Yeah. I think that's always the intimidating part, is that when you kind of just overall think about one one field, you automatically think that one person has to do everything. And I think that was my mentality when I was in art school, that since I went in there for 3D design, that I automatically thought I had to learn everything when it comes to like modeling, rigging, and all these other things. But it's a thing where like you're just really going to go into it and specialize in one area. So I think it's the same thing in your case, that I think a lot of people do get intimidated that they're going to be like, oh, I have to like design the house, design the colors, and all these other things, and it's way too much for one person.
Well, people also see the finished product, and even when you're looking at projects, you're like, oh my gosh, like I could never do this, and like it's all baby steps to get to it, and it's all like, you know, you build a concept and then you just do baby steps, and somehow you're like, this is just what you get. You live through this chaos, and then you know, you somehow just like it all just comes together. Like,
right.
You just have to get used to living in the chaos and trusting like your path of instinct going through, and like everything that you build on it. And it's like you have to repeat it every single time you do these projects.
Right. I think you said the perfect thing there with like the baby steps, because I think that's how you kind of just have to break it down, that you don't want to overwhelm yourself. You definitely want to break everything into smaller pieces and then gradually kind of like take on those things and learn something each time from all those baby steps. Awesome. So going into that one, what would you say are your overall influences when it came to starting to get into the interior design world? Were there any specific like designers or just people in your life that kind of inspired you to kind of go into that field?
My grandfather had a tile company, and so it always just seemed like the family business. Like my dad was an antique collector too. He had an amazing sense of taste. We grew up in very well furnished homes, and I really loved his sense of style. And it just seemed like it was always kind of like we always were thinking about like the organization of our spaces and how things looked. And I think that's where I kind of became interested in it as a kid. Like I was always very interested in like creating like little spaces and little homes and designing things. And so I don't really like I mean, apart from that, I never really had much like I never really thought about like who's my style icon. But I remember when I heard about Zaha Hadid, I thought, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think that there could be like I've never heard of a female architect. And I really loved her work, and like even my stuff today that I do and my classes and everything, it's like very curvilinear. And very organic. And especially in moving to the Bay, I also really love Ken Folk. Yeah, and like all his colors and like his draw to historical like architecture and things like that. And I was like, I just love how he made me think about too, like even like doing interior design with like the historical part of it. And so I started volunteering at the Haas-Lilienthal House. So I'm like, I love Victorians and I love historical architecture. And so like just little like pieces here and there that I think that I've kind of like drawn to in my life, which is, I think my influences were a little bit more later on.
Yeah.
When I'm starting to figure out my own footing and my own voice and like what I like to do. And definitely it's nice to kind of think too, like who are my Bay Area inspirations?
Yeah. What do you do over there when you volunteer?
I do cashiering.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't even gotten to the docent part. I mean, they gave me this like binder that's like this thick. And then like I've been doing, then COVID happened. And so I was supposed to start my docent training. And so you would be doing these house tours. And doing these like guided house tours. And I was kind of like their little success story. Like I just randomly like found them and I'm like, I just want to work with like historical architecture.
Right.
I just want to know everything about like Victorian houses. And I ended up sticking and I'm like one of the youngest volunteers there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, their whole thing is like, we need to draw in like more young people.
Yeah.
So I stuck around.
Yeah.
And so hopefully after COVID, I'll be actually like taking my docent training seriously. And
Yeah.
they're doing audio tours.
Oh, okay.
So they can open and actually have like a safe, like, I guess like for COVID and stuff like that, like a safe kind of like thing, especially because they do have like older docents. It's a lot safer for them.
Right.
And I do event work with them too. And so whatever, Pam is the volunteer coordinator, and she does a ton of stuff for them, and they do like tons of events. So I just try and jump in anywhere that I can.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, they just bought the old Grateful Dead house in the Haight.
Oh, yeah.
That's where like the SF Historical Society is, and they have some property, and that's like their whole thing is about preserving architecture. So hopefully they do some events with that. Once things are allowable and safe again.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all hoping, especially now since things are starting to get a little bit better. But hopefully we kind of get back to that point where we can all go back to the things that we love doing.
I know. It's crazy. It's been over a year, and even just like the thought of eating inside a restaurant, it's like I had like a moment where I was like deep in this like studio design, and I'm just like, I'm ready to like have a mental breakdown. Like, I am designing interiors, and I haven't been in interior for over a year. Like, I'm losing my mind. I forget like my space. I don't know like what is my life.
I totally feel the same way, where I'm just like in here just trying to like somehow mix things up just to like, make it not feel like Groundhog's Day, and just, everything pretty much just.
This wall has been 3 different colors.
At least you're getting your practice there pretty much, where you're like, oh, I'll try this color out to see if it works out or not.
I know, the whole place.
Oh, that's awesome. I think I was going to ask you that as a follow-up question later on, but since we're already here, based on like now your experience being in the Bay Area for so long, what has been some of your favorite architecture throughout like the city, and I guess not even just SF, but just overall in the Bay Area?
I would say, okay, so I forget the name of the church. It's in Oakland, and I actually had to design it for one of my studio classes, and it's the church in Oakland. It's like the Church of Light.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like the fish. And so it's designed like the Alpha Omega. And it's like a really beautiful, like glass church in there. And the interior is just like mind blowing. And I would say another one, I don't know why it's all kind of like weirdly religious in a weird way. The Columbarium, that's in like, is it Pack Heights?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Where? Oh, Richmond? You were yelling at me from the other room. That's where they keep all like the urns and all that stuff. But it's like a really cool circular, like old building. And then St. Mary's Church.
Oh, okay.
The one by Japantown.
Right.
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah, I just like a lot of churches apparently.
Yeah.
And apart from the cool Victorian houses that are in the city.
I think the last time I went to New Orleans, it was only like my second time being there, and just the same thing of just kind of like walking around the city. Like, it was just amazing just to kind of see the differences in like architecture for like the houses, the shops, and then same thing with like the churches in the area. That it's so cool to see like how there's similarities, but then in general, like there's that certain style depending on like the state or the city that you're in, that they really kind of just have their own kind of unique design work. And I think that's like a mix of like the designer, but overall just like the culture that's around them, which is really cool.
Yeah, they have that like really cool like French Southern like those 2-level buildings there, which are very interesting.
Yeah. Nice. What are some of your hobbies when you're not kind of focused on like either design or school? Like what else? What are your other outside interests as well?
So it's weird. I've like had somebody that in an interview that like was offended where I was like, I don't have hobbies like outside of like working in school. Cause like school's been my hobby for so long. I graduated in 2008. And so it's like the recession.
Yeah.
And like immediately I'm like, I gotta work. I hustle. My life is just working. And so like I went back to school when I was 24 to go to college, and I was here in the Bay. And so that for me was like, okay, I feel settled. Like, I started taking like art classes there. And since then it was always like a night class here and there, some art class. And that was always like my hobby. Just to kind of get out of my head because like I work weekends, like,
Right.
I just work whenever I can. And now that like school has kind of, become my full time and now it's going to be like my career change. Yeah, I like ask myself all the time, like, what are my hobbies? And so it is like I do a lot of like architecture walks in the city, which strange. It's just I like used to love taking like old school photography, and I would love to get into that more. But now it's just like more of like just like cataloging things that I don't see anymore. Like with the city slowing down, it's like I love to just like go out and just like catalog like things that I don't see because I'm just hustling and bustling everywhere. And
Yeah.
like um thrift store shopping,
Yeah.
figuring out how to drink like an adult and like what are my wines that I like.
Oh yeah, I think that's the thing that from I forgot to mention earlier that you and I have worked together at a previous tech company, and I think the thing that always reunited everybody was the wine downs on Friday. And we just had like a mix of everything there when it came to like different like beers, hard alcohol, and wine. And yeah, it was just like,
oh, that liquor wall is just like, were you there when I took it down? It's okay. We don't even have to dive into it. But I still do wine shots.
Oh yeah.
So for anyone who's like watching this, so wine shots was really just us pouring little tiny glasses of wine into a shot glass. So we didn't go overboard, but really it was just taking 20 shots within a 2-hour span, which was just like 3 bottles of wine, wine shots. So inappropriate.
You were just distributing it a little bit differently, but it was going to be the same thing at the end.
It was going to be the same. I know. So now drinking like an adult and being like, oh, I have like a taste in wine, and like trying to go and like
yeah.
Actually learn how to cook for myself because we're not being fed by tech companies anymore, which is distressing. My roommates have like, they all work in hospitality and they like don't understand me. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like I do not know how to cook because for most of my adult years, I worked in these companies that fed me.
Right. No, I was telling my my other friend, because he's kind of the opposite, where now he's just starting to get into the tech industry, and he's about my age, so he's in his mid 30s as well. So now he's like doing the opposite effect of like he's used to like going out somewhere to buy something or bring something from home, and this is of course before the pandemic. So when he started going into the office and realizing like everything was just catered to him, he was just like totally blown away by everything. And same thing with like the alcohol Fridays of like whatever they had. He was just like blown away by everything.
I know. I'm going to miss it, but not really.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of nice to switch out of tech for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. With that, I was going to ask you, since you kind of have like a mix of the two things now, where you have like that eye for design, and same thing with like eating and eating, drinking, and like going to listen to music and stuff like that. Are there any areas like it could be the Bay Area or anywhere else that you feel like the mix of everything kind of adds overall to like the atmosphere? So for example, in my case, I really love the Fox Theater in Oakland, just because I really love the architecture there inside and outside, but overall, like just like the vibe of everything, like when you listen to live music or if you're hanging out with friends and drinking, that all of it combined together just gives it like that really amazing vibe. Would you say you have any areas like that as far as either venues or restaurants that kind of like the architecture is a part of the experience?
I would say one place that really impressed me that I started going to, I mean, I love dive bars. Like I would say, oh my God, Specs is my place. Like it's not even architecturally built. It's just when you go inside, it's like the interior is just an homage to like old beatnik San Francisco. And like that's what I like. Like I love Vesuvio. I love Specs. Those are my shout outs all day. Okay, Vesuvio is more architectural.
Yeah.
But one place I was really impressed with, one of the renovations is August Hall.
Oh, okay.
And they built like a really beautiful green room, which I think was a bit mid-century. It had the like kind of like the smoky like green, and it was really beautiful. And they did a really good job renovating it. And it was really nice to just like go over there and just like it was just a very nice experience as opposed to maybe like just maybe back in the day when it was a little bit more nightclubby.
Right.
It just seemed a little bit more upscale. But yeah, I mean, if you were to say like the combination of like going out and vibing and it's like the architecture, I would say Vesuvio is one of those
Oh, okay.
places. Like, have you been in there?
I have not, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Oh, it's just incredible. Yeah, it's really cool. I don't know what the style would be in there. It's because it has like all this like really nice like custom glass on the outside and murals, and then you go in there and it's got this like 2-level, but like the second level like wraps around this like banister.
Oh.
And so you can peer over the bar.
Yeah.
So it's Oh, and what else? What's there's I just like cool preserved like dive bars.
Yeah.
Where I think you get the most like out of the experience and like the area or just like the aesthetic when it's just like, oh, this smells like 80 years of like sweat and love and like entertainment. And I'm trying to think, there's like the saloon.
Oh yeah. I've been there.
Oh, that's like the oldest bar in North Beach too. And you go in there and the floors are like off and creaky. And
I love that. I love the atmosphere there. Yeah.
I know. It's like, that's kind of like, I mean, like City Hall and all these places are really beautiful, but like places that come to mind for me are just like the old, like where they're still doing what they started as kind of buildings. Like, wow, you're still here. You're still kicking it.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, you think everything's kind of like, so many people lament on like things being dead in San Francisco, or it's not the same as it was. And you still have these places that are still standing.
Yeah. The one I just thought of while we were chatting was I don't know if you've been to the chapel in like a church too.
Oh, the chapel. Is that in Valencia?
Yeah, Valencia. That's the one.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I really love that one too, just because of like how simple it is, but it's the same thing that you just know that like by staying traditional and simple, like it just gives you like a really good vibe, and you can just like hang out there, listen to the live music, and just
that's a great spot. I think the last show I went there, I don't even know who was playing, but there was this artist on the top who was doing this light projector, and on the light projector he had these bowls of ink, and he was like mixing them in the bowls and projecting on the walls, and it looked like the walls were like,
oh, nice.
Like he was doing like this old school light show, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, nowadays it's like we do a lot of like there's like visual mapping and like projection and all that, but he's doing like the old school version where it looks like everything's like melting, and old school hippie guy. It was super cool.
It's like the equivalent of like doing it traditional versus using like special 3D effects or anything. It's like doing the real deal at that point.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you kind of touched on this earlier, but how has it been so far being like, since now you've had the experience of being a student before the pandemic and during the pandemic? How would you say like, what are the differences and like, I guess the pros and cons of both, of like being like a student remotely full-time versus the traditional way, I guess?
I would say it's worked out for me just because I don't have to commute to San Jose. I do really miss, and I actually haven't been to San Jose State as a student. Before I was at the city college, and I couldn't imagine like doing not being in my studio classes physically. So I think that was the biggest change. It's learning how to work and collaborate in a virtual environment. And I do group projects, and it's like you have to like I'm creating these new relationships all in like a virtual environment, and it's very, and I think our professors have been doing a very good job of like being there for us and holding space to like get people to adjust to this like new reality. And yeah, we're going to be opening up soon, like in a hybrid setting. And that's
Oh,
just the
okay.
biggest thing that I miss is just being there physically and being able to like work with your teammates, like actually building stuff in a physical setting,
Yeah, yeah,
which, I've just been like whittling stuff in my room or my kitchen.
yeah.
And you're kind of like showing like your camera to this. And it's like, oh, you don't really like, it's hard to like do the quality of it too when you don't have access to tools and you don't have your team members to really see like how can we do these like quality finishes and stuff like that.
Right.
So that's kind of been the hardest part. Other than that, it's been really nice to be able to like have my own space too. And again,
Mhm.
like I'm not working right now and I'm very fortunate for that. This is probably the longest I haven't worked
Right.
my adult life. And to just be able to like enjoy school because I haven't been able to enjoy school being in school because I'm always working.
Right,
And
right.
so I'm just so grateful and like fortunate to have this opportunity. And I am just like diving into it as much as possible and like trying to get involved in as much as I can.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think I can kind of speak on that a little bit from my experience because when I was in art school, I would be working part time at a paint store and going to school. And during my last, I guess, technical senior year is where I left my part time job so I can just dedicate the full year to my last year. And it's such a difference, like just how you said, like just being able to really focus and enjoy like the projects and like just overall, like I would imagine that you would actually learn a lot more as well because you're just fully giving it your full focus at that point.
I definitely have more time to just like really sit in what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm learning more. It's just I'm able to apply more. I'm able
Right,
to
right.
experiment more. Like one of my colleagues was like, she has her own business, she has kids, and she's also doing a career change. And she's like, it's impossible for me to because we spend 14 hours on Zoom just doing studio class, like just doing the lectures.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's even before we start actually working. And so for her, it's like, I don't get to experiment. I have to commit to a design and I have to apply it. And it's really hard to do. And the whole thing with like our stuff too, it's like you get feedback and you're even up until like the last week. It's like, oh, you know what? Scrap this. You
Hmm.
need to like redo it basically. Like you get stuff like that. And it's like, oh my God, like if I have all these hours and I need to plan out my school around it, it's like, how do I even accomplish this?
Right.
Like, how do you find the time to like put this work together? And it's crazy.
Yeah, it's where would you say like the kind of like creative energy comes in when like when you can say that you want to like work on something, but then is it a combination of like the feedback that you get from people, or mentally do you say like, oh no, I actually think I can approach this a better way? When do you kind of get to that point where you're like, okay, either I'm going to commit to this idea 100%, or I still have enough time to kind of like slowly back up and try something different?
I don't think you should ever commit to anything 100%.
Hmm.
I think you should commit to it like 50% and
Right,
always like accept feedback and improve on it.
right, right,
Like
right,
whatever you're going to get, you're going to like, you can always do better. Like the feedback is a launching point. Um,
right.
and you should always be ready to like change things. And like never like take anything personally if people,
Hmm.
because that's what people do. They get really married to like their ideas and it's like, you shouldn't like,
Right.
don't get married to this project. Don't get married to your idea. Don't take it personally when people are like, this isn't working, because then you're not going to be able to grow and like produce better work.
Yeah.
Like there's always potential where you think you are. And like you can like really expand on that just by keeping like a very open mindset.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. You were mentioning that you would be working in these projects with folks. Like, how does that kind of work with the remote aspect? Like, do you kind of divide and conquer on like what folks are going to kind of work on specifically, or is it more of like a collaboration?
It's all collaboration. Yeah, you can't really divide and conquer when you're building spaces, because it's not like we're physically building it. These are all just kind of like we're not like doing a client project right now. So it's like we're just creating this in a virtual environment. These are all just kind of like abstract things that we're putting together. But it's like you can't divide and conquer in that sense, because then you're gonna have like you're gonna have divided spaces.
Right.
So it's like everything that you do, it's like we basically just do like Zoom calls where we're like, let's just draw these lines. And then how can we apply these lines in different areas? And then we all just like commit to this like style and then expand on that. And then the way that we can kind of like slowly check in and like build these spaces and then bring things together is like we're switching. Like one person will build the wall, I'll be building the stairs, and then we switch. So I'll start playing with the wall, they start playing with the stairs. It's like, so we all like are slowly touching a little bit of everything, which I think has been pretty successful so far. I have a big project right now and we're doing that method. And you just have to be ready to like, just like constantly just be like moving on something and then being able to change it.
Right.
And then like keep moving forward.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. But luckily, it's not like project management where it's like, okay, like let's think about this in a construction phase and who's going to take what. It's like, no, there's no budgeting. We have unlimited budget.
Right. Yeah.
It's fun. It's still fun.
Yeah. It's cool because we can use like these terminologies that we've learned from like the tech space, but in this case, like since it is just like for educational purposes, you don't have to break it down that like that way when it comes to like budgets and everything. I was going to ask you, like, when it comes to the differences between interior and exterior design in this field, do you touch anything on that aspect with like the exterior part, or is it still primarily just like interior design?
Yeah, we touch stuff with the exterior. I don't think. I mean, we can design for the exterior. I think architects are the only ones who can like finalize exteriors, but we can do like, there's like parklets and like outdoor seating and all that kind of stuff. Like what you do when you make exterior spaces, which has become more obvious during COVID. It's like, oh, you see like people actually developing like parklets and like getting to understand like how to create exterior environments.
Right.
Now with like with outdoor kind of like setups for people. The outdoor is the indoor now.
Yeah. It's like a real hybrid role now.
Yeah. I think a majority of what we're doing is very interior, though.
You bring up a good point, because now I didn't even think about that now, where that could, depending on like how we move forward, like that could definitely be like a new role of just trying to think of alternatives. Like, not that I'm hoping like this will happen again, but then just to kind of plan ahead, like in case if we do need to move stuff outdoors, like to be able to plan ahead for cases like that.
Yeah. And with all of our projects, in every single project now that we're doing, it's like, well, how is this going to be COVID friendly?
Yeah.
How are you going to think about if we, post COVID life, but also if there's another pandemic or something like that, like how can this like be switched up to accommodate like these spaces and things like that? And so that's a lot of what they have us think about now, where it's like there's no guidelines.
Right.
Like the company that I saw do like a lot of like initial guidelines for even offices with like keyworth and like doing their own studies, but they're doing that on the fly. And so that was even before it was like how we thought, being in interiors, like with COVID, we just thought it was all surface cleaning before we were even wearing masks.
Right.
And like you see people in restaurants like putting up these like these partitions, and it's like, is that really like going to prevent it when it's like kind of floating in the air? It's like, what really is the best way? And I think we're all just kind of like, because everything is just working here in the now and going so quickly, and we have to figure it out so quickly. it's like, we don't really know.
Right, right.
We're all just kind of like inventing it as we go. And so that's kind of what they're asking from us. And that's what we're seeing right now in the market. And it's just very interesting to see how people develop. I had to create a spa as my first project.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I did these like individual style little saunas. And it's like, I did the research on it. And it's like, you can have these like 2-person saunas and they're both tested.
Yeah.
You have to create like a case around how everything's like COVID friendly now. Like individual saunas, I had therapy rooms for 2 people. Like everything was like super partitioned out. And it's like very interesting. It's probably not even, it's like, would that even work now? Who knows?
Yeah.
I'll get you vaccinated, but does that really count?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So everything has to be very flexible.
Yeah, that's very true. Kind of leading into that, what would you say have been some of your favorite projects to work on? And it could be anything really. Like it could be either like a personal favorite project or like a collaborative project.
I would say I love what I'm doing now. I think because we have a lot of like commercial application, it's just been like a dream for me. My favorite project though is one of my first studio projects at the City College.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to pass this class, you have to build these like physical, like living spaces.
Oh, okay.
And they have everyone do it. And my group thought we were super slick because everyone usually builds in wood and they have these like wooden structures. And I hate seeing them kind of like rot after the semester and you're supposed to go and clean it up. And it's like kind of dumpy and depressing.
Yeah.
And and also it's like we didn't really want to work with wood. And so I remember I was kind of obsessed with Shigeru Ban at the time.
Oh.
And he did the Church Christ New Zealand church out of, and his whole thing is around like paper mache structures.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm like, let's do it out of cardboard.
Oh, nice.
We created this really beautiful tessellating origami wall. And it was cool. You could like walk in between and we like hand cut everything and we stitched it all together. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like sustainable. And, we can just recycle it after this.
Right.
It doesn't create any waste. They did not buy it.
I
mean, it was like beautiful. We passed the class. But definitely after they were like, it has to be wood. It has to be this like material where you have to learn how to like use tools, and we totally skirted around that. But I think that was my favorite project, and just we kind of like we bucked the trend a little bit, and we kind of like rebelled against the standards there. And I think every project should, for the most part, if you have the liberty, I think everyone should try to use like and interpret and like put some like different influence into what they're doing. And I would say that was one of my favorites, just because of that, because they had to change the rules.
Yeah.
Because of us.
It's like one of those things that say like technically there's no rule that like a bear can play basketball until like a bear actually shows up to play basketball. So it's one of those scenarios where you're forcing them to kind of like change the rules at that point.
I know. I was very proud of that.
That's awesome. I had probably just like one more question for you. Would you say that there's any projects that have been like a blessing in disguise where it comes to maybe something that wouldn't be considered like successful, but in your eyes, it ended up being very inspirational or very, it ended up leading to more positive things, even though that stereotypically it would be considered either like unsuccessful?
Well, I mean, maybe I could just reflect on working as a facilities manager and how turbulent startup life is and just how rapid things change. And, with Emily and I both doing the office management there, and we built out this second floor space, which took like Emily like 8 months. I joined in, it was all like 6 months for me. And how much time was invested in like building out the space. And then as soon as we're done, it's like, we're in it for 2 months.
Right.
And then we end up like leasing it out. And it's, I kind of like, I don't know if it was a blessing in disguise, but it was just more of a taste of like, I think like seeing a product just kind of like, there you go, you just release.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gave me a good mindset for just how I look at design and how I want to build out spaces. It's like, I'm not building it to enjoy it myself. I'm building it for other people to enjoy, and I'm building it. I got to let it go. It's like, these like little baby projects, and it's like, okay, be free. I don't know if that's a good way to look at it, but
yeah.
And two, like also, I was in the midst before the last layoff of building out Toronto and like finding real estate and even like going out to the WeWorks, and like I was physically putting furniture together.
Oh, wow.
And like in the dead of winter in Toronto, going back and forth between IKEA and Toronto and like hanging curtains and trying to make like, these spaces for people. And it's like, as soon as I get back, it's like everything's shutting down. And,
Right.
You just kind of like, you put your heart and soul into building out things, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. And that's just how you just have to move on. Like things work out. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You just have to release that. Like,
right.
Let things go. Like just move forward.
Yeah. And kind of how you said it with the chaos of like the tech industry. A lot of it is just, of course, like deadlines and, budgets and everything. So in your case, like maybe you do want to kind of like build out something a little bit more to your ideals, but then you have so many restrictions when it comes to like other people's like deadlines or like their vision of what they want to see, that you do have to just do the best that you can. And then like how you said, you just have to release it at that point.
Well, even from like a facility side, it's, you project this like $5 million idea, you get like the architects and the designers on board, and you're like, yes, like this is what I want. And then it really comes down that you're spending only $1 million. Like,
right.
You like always project like 5 times the budget. And when it really comes down to it, it's like just a percentage of that. And so it's like, it's really interesting because I've been on that side where I'm like, yes, like we are going to spend the money. And then it's like, no, we can't. And like knowing that, it's like, I feel like I have a good sense of when I'm on the other side. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to put this one here. Like knowing what we're working with or who we're working with, who our clients are, and just keeping an open mind and like just like holding space for that too, of like setting up like reasonable expectations from the get-go.
Right.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from that is.
Right. No, I couldn't have said it any better because like I think I've run into those scenarios too, where I have like this picture perfect vision of like what I want from a project, and then reality hits and then I have to kind of like adjust. And if I don't have like a backup plan of like what I expected, then it's like a lot of improv that I had to figure out like what to do. But I think in that scenario, like just kind of setting those realistic expectations and planning ahead more with like backup plans, that I think you're setting yourself up a lot better for any scenario that comes your way at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. I definitely want to be respectful of your time, but I had so much fun like catching up and at the same time learning a lot because I was talking to one of my friends because he just started at a new company, and we were saying like when we meet people at certain like tech companies or anywhere, especially like large ones, the one that we were at, like where it was like over 100+ people, it's hard to really just like sit down and get to know one individually. That I kind of consider it like when you're running like a 5K or like a half marathon or whatever, that you have like those little moments where you can catch up to someone and have like a brief conversation, but then overall like you're all in the same race, and that you have to like eventually get back into it and focus on the race. So I really like being able to catch up with folks that I've met throughout the years and just finally get to know like what you actually did in these certain roles and have more of a respect for it. And at the same time, just finally get to know you as a person as well. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And I love what you do too. And you were running that 5K race. Literally. So you ran all of our clubs. It was so impressive.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot we even had that.
I know. I was so grateful. Yeah, you were a good one. but yeah, thank you so much. And I love what you do, and I appreciate you reaching out to me. And it's so nice to get to know you on this level. And, I hope to like go to your shows and stuff when things are good. And, I'm hoping to like get to know you better too in a real setting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
My door's always open.
Yeah, it's like we'll do like this interior thing that people have been always talking about. Like I don't know what that is anymore after a year.
I don't either.
Awesome. Before we headed off, did you want to like plug anything or kind of give us any information on where we can reach you on anything like social media or anything?
I'll quickly plug in the Haas-Lilienthal House. Please go and check it out. Do a walkthrough there. It's very cool. It's like the only Victorian house open museum. It's all restored that you can walk through in San Francisco. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to plug in Mission Meals. I really love them. It's a community food drive run by local people here. It's in my hood, and I love them so much, and they've been hustling during COVID, so I will just plug them into everything and with everybody. And yeah, those are it.
Awesome. Yeah, I will definitely make sure to put like the URL links in the description and everything, so people will have an easier way to contact those. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much again for joining us. And yeah, I really appreciate just catching up and chatting.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to catch future episodes.